Hello and welcome back to another episode of Tech Champions. I'm your host, Daniel Beaty, CTO with AuditMax in Jacksonville, Florida. As you know, we take time each week to sit down with thought leaders and industry experts in the field of technology. We learn about their journey and their mission and get their take on the latest trends in the industry. We always have amazing guests on the show, and today is no exception. Joining us from Boston is Michael Parks. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Daniel. Glad to be here.
Oh, you bet. Glad to have you on. So, Michael, you currently serve as the head of IT for Home Market Foods, but I know you've held a number of positions across your career, a couple decades at Accenture, and then you're a franchise owner too, which we'll get into a little bit today as well. So maybe just for our audience, start with a little bit of background on yourself and kind of your personal journey to this point.
Yeah, sure thing. So I went to college to be a chemical engineer and earned a degree there from Tufts University some years ago. And at the time, I didn't really know much about IT and consulting. But through the process coming out of college of discovering what I wanted to do with my career, I discovered Accenture, which, as many people know, is a very large IT consulting company. So I joined Accenture right out of college. And I really loved it. I loved it for many years. I was there 18 years in total. Something I loved about it was that it was always project oriented. It was always different. We were using new technologies and we were driving, business change and driving value from technology. So I just truly loved doing that over and over again. It never felt like one job. It was always a new job every year or two, sitting right at the intersection of business and technology. And to me, that's what gets me excited about technology is what you can do with it, not just the technology itself. So big chunk of my career there at Accenture. And then I had an opportunity to go run most of an IT department at large publicly traded REITs, real estate investment trusts. And I've always had an interest in real estate. So this was an opportunity here for me to go use my technology skills in the real estate arena and really got to learn the real estate business from the inside out there.
Okay. Yeah, great. And I talk to so many different folks like yourself. It's always fun for me to hear about their varied background. So like the chemical engineering, there's an amazing number of people that have made their career in IT that are not trained in that formally, at least from a college level. So that's great. I love those stories. We want to get into your real estate in just a minute, but I do want to talk about this project I found pretty interesting in our pre-call. I know you worked on hundreds of projects over the years, but this one that you did with Meraki, I found particularly interesting. Can you talk to our audience about first of all, your decision making towards the Meraki solution specifically, how you made that choice?
Yeah, so let me start with the business challenge we had. So we were continuously buying and selling real estate commercial buildings, right? And as all across the country. And so as that occurs, we needed to stand up these small offices to support the buildings in various geographies. So we're constantly, standing up offices and taking them down. And so that created a challenge from the standpoint of how do you manage that highly distributed network. Even though it was small offices, they were all over the place. So the Meraki solution with a software-defined networking allowed us to do it much faster at scale, really in a matter of minutes, whereas what we would have to do previously was go device by device. So the Meraki solution was one that we were a Cisco shop, and Meraki's solution fit very well for that. I'd say, there was another piece to that solution too, which is each of these offices would have building automation systems and technology there to run the technology in the buildings. And that was often supported by third parties. And those third-party vendors needed access to those systems to support, maintain them, and so forth. And so we had the challenge of building engineers that oftentimes were working on HVAC systems and the like, trying to work with building automation vendors and bring them in and doing more things that are more closely were analogous to IT. And so we discovered a second part to the solution through a vendor um, that gave us access to give vendors direct access for a period of time, a prescribed period of time, in which they could get in, do their work. It was all recorded, and that way we had an audit trail, and then it would remove that access at the end. And we were able to do that with our building engineers. Now didn't have to be the hands on the keyboard, and we didn't have to have IT in there putting passwords in. We could basically grant the access in a limited way and still have control and visibility over it.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Take out the manual process, and then you've got the logs on the back end too. So that's great. And I'm sure, Michael, that there's some of our audience that are pursuing a similar project like that. Can you give us maybe a lesson learned from that rollout that would help our folks that are in the same boat?
Yeah, so I would say one of our biggest lessons learned is that as operational technology, the technology that runs in the buildings, as that is becoming more internet enabled through this whole IoT explosion, the Internet of Things explosion that everybody talks about, that's real. And so what's happening is we've got building engineers that are more traditionally focused in, let's say, HVAC systems, heating, cooling, all of the mechanical systems, even security, card access, things like that. Those folks are now needing to learn whole new skill sets around IT. And you've got IT folks who never really thought much about those building systems that are now trying to learn those pieces. And so the lesson learned is that finding that unicorn that understands both really, really well is hard. And so it takes a collaboration between IT and your building engineers together. And when you're doing it geographically distributed, it was super helpful when we would team them up together and use a real-time collaboration tool, video conferencing, that sort of thing. So both people can be seeing what the other is looking at and be able to guide people through it. Sending out instructions and having people trying to do it on their own, those sorts of things were challenging. But doing it together as a team, real time, with the collaboration tools made all the difference.
Okay. No, that's great. I love that. That's good advice. And you're reminding me that there's a lot of devices out there to secure these days too. You
There
know, 10
sure
years
are.
ago you didn't your HVAC couldn't get hacked, and now it can. So that's interesting.
And that's a
Yeah.
whole area that's been largely unsecured for a long time, and it's an area that is getting hacked regularly. Everybody's dealing with ransomware, but some of these systems that people aren't thinking about that are less protected in many cases, they are ripe and vulnerable. And you know what? If getting ransomware on a 100,000 square foot building that now you can't control the temperature in, that can be
Right.
a significant challenge.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. So let's change gears for just a minute. I know one of your other passions is, of course, the real estate, and you work with Spire Investment Properties as well. Can you kind of walk us through your progression from a technology leader into the real estate realm?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, I've learned a lot of the business working at those large publicly traded REITs. However, becoming a real estate investor on my own, I followed a journey which I found that a lot of people who ultimately do get into real estate investing follow. Um, Sometimes, and I did this. I started with a vacation home, so I thought, geez, wouldn't this be great? I'll go buy a vacation home, and then I will rent it out on Airbnb or something like that, right? And it will pay for itself, and I'll get to use it sometimes. The interesting thing is that coming out of that, you learn that you really want a vacation. You don't necessarily want the vacation rental. Um,
Right.
and so you go up and you put all this passion into picking the place and furnishing it, and then you go up and some renters have destroyed some pieces of it, and you're like, oh geez, now you're being invaded in your home. um, but then people sometimes will move, and I did move into small rental properties, whether that's single family homes or 2-3 family houses, things like that. And and they can be, profitable if you pick the right ones in the right markets. What you tend to find, though, is that they tend to be a lot of work for such a small scale. And, and you only have 3 apartments and one of them goes vacant, you're 33% vacant. So really, it's about driving to a scale in real estate that turns it into something that is much more investable, in my view. And so, like a lot of people, I graduated out of the small properties, listened to a lot of podcasts, got my real estate agent license, and then moving into middle or large size apartment complexes, and discovered this thing called passive real estate investing. And the idea is that we pull groups of investors together, pool our funds, and then buy large apartment buildings, whether that's 50 units, 100 units, or more. And it's all run by a general partnership team. And that team brings the expertise to not only source the deal, but also a lot of times do some rehabilitation, take care of some deferred maintenance, maybe upgrade the apartments, kitchens, baths, flooring, and be able to really drive value out of the buildings. So as an investor, as a passive investor, you're able to invest in apartments that really you probably wouldn't be able to do on your own in many cases, and be able to get some great returns, and without all the headaches of having to lease every apartment and answer the phone calls when the toilet's plugged and all the other things that go along with being a landlord. So that's the pathway that I've followed, and I think many people have followed that progression.
Yeah, no, that's great. And back in the day, Michael, I owned a duplex, and I spent a lot of weekends in the crawl space and fixing the toilet, as you mentioned, and things like that. So I like the idea already, just being out of that part of it, and take my investment, but I don't want to be the one that's getting the midnight phone call. So I like that. That's a great idea. But a lot of us are kind of in the stock market, right? We're 401k mutual fund. Most of us don't have the expertise to make specific decisions like that. But you obviously like real estate better. Is there reasons why you think it's a better investment?
Yeah, well, I would say that I subscribe to the view that it's important to have a diversified portfolio. And I do have a lot of my personal investments in Wall Street, and I think that makes sense. But to me, if it's all in Wall Street, that is too narrowly focused. So there's things about alternative assets and real estate in particular that I think are very compelling, and so that's why I like to invest in real estate. So specifically, when I think about Wall Street, there's wild swings in valuation. Think about what happened earlier this year with COVID-19 and the drastic reduction pretty much everybody saw in their portfolios early in the year. Now, most of that has come back. But when you look back to the dot-com bubble, it took 15 years to get back to that level. So you never know how fast or how slow it's going to take to gain or lose. It seems like the losing happens a lot faster than the gaining. At least that's been what I've seen. I really like I like the stability of investing in real assets, at least with a portion of my portfolio. When you're invested in real estate, there's an intrinsic value to it. There's rental income that comes in, so you actually make money just by holding it. And then, of course, there's opportunities for appreciation and tax breaks as well.
Sure. No, I like that. And if you follow any of the cryptocurrencies are crazy, and there's days where I feel like, wow, I should have bought Bitcoin a month ago. But there's a lot of days where I feel like I'm glad I didn't buy Bitcoin a month ago. And look at even GameStop in the last 48 hours, and it's a wild ride for sure. So I like the consistency that you're speaking of. So, but unfortunately, we're almost out of time. We do need to wrap for the day. But I do want to ask you one final question. Because we're called Tech Champions, is there one characteristic that you think it takes to become a tech champion?
Yeah, I would say this is from my 18 years at Accenture, and part of our DNA there, which is it's about a maniacal focus on planning and delivering. So plan your future, architect it, and then deliver it. Measure it, move on. do it again.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you, Michael, for being on the show. Hey, if people want to reach out to learn more about you or Spire Investment or Home Market Foods, what's the best way for them to find you?
Best way is to email me at michael@spireinvestmentproperties.com. I also have a free ebook if anyone wants to download it on my website on the insider secrets to real estate investing to live life on your own terms. And that's at spireinvestmentproperties.com/secret.
Okay. Michael Parks, everyone, thank you for being on the show. To our audience, thank you as well, and we'll see you next time on Tech Champions.